You touched on education briefly, and here in Montgomery County and Maryland in general, white students are more than twice as likely to meet or exceed expectations on the 4th grade reading and math than both black and brown children. And this gap continues to expand. It's not getting better, it's actually getting worse.
Right.
What do we need to fix it?
Absolutely.
So that we can provide better education to our children and we can bridge this gap and then provide these children with opportunities that other children are having in the community and they're being marginalized, and all the consequences that this brings as they grow up and become adults.
Absolutely. So it's heartbreaking to see the statistics and the numbers which have been there for way too long. And I think we need a paradigm shift in how we educate and support our children and youth, particularly the sons and daughters of our immigrant communities. So let me tell you a little quick story. So my parents immigrated here from South America, from Chile and Ecuador. And they were very smart. I was born in 1976, so that's how old I am. But they were very smart because they exclusively, and they were militant about speaking to me in Spanish. They only spoke to me in Spanish. We live with my abuelitos. And so now they spoke Chilean Spanish, but that's okay.
That's okay.
So they wanted to make sure that I was going to grow up fully bilingual, fully fluent. So I actually didn't pick up English until I was in grade school, and that's when I was first exposed. And so that put me a little behind because of the curriculum that had been established at the time, which hasn't changed very much since then. And in 3rd grade, they wanted to put me in special education. And I have nothing to say negative about special education because it's so important for so many kids. But I didn't belong in that program. But because of the English proficiency issues, and because it took me a little bit longer because of the way that the curriculum had been taught, I was behind. We need to change the curriculum. We need to acknowledge that this needs to be taught in dual language. And if the preference of the child is in Spanish or in French or in another language of origin, then let's maximize that. Let's take advantage of that because it's a tremendous asset to have kids who are going to grow up that speak multiple languages in a global economy. It's huge.
It makes our workforce truly international.
Yeah, so I think we need to view that as the asset that it is from the early age that it is. So that's the first thing. We need a sea change in how we think about our curriculum. The second thing is we do need to acknowledge that particularly for our newly arriving kids who've gone through the trauma of having to cross the border and leave their families and sacrifice all that they're sacrificing, we need to provide special supports for them. Now, the thought has always been, let's have them go into a school and then provide the appropriate level of support. For some of our kids, Mauricio, it needs to be more in depth than that. We need, in some cases, schools that these kids can go to that really uniquely meet their needs. And those schools need to just meet the needs of the kids, but of their parents as well. And that's the final factor. While we're educating these kids, we need to educate their parents. We need to provide support for their parents because there are some instances in which mom and dad are not in a position to be able to help with homework because of their own challenges and struggles or their own English level proficiency. So we either need to provide tutors, but we also need to be able to provide support for those families and raise all boats at the same time. There's a really great program in DC called Carlos Rosario. It's one of my favorite programs in the area. They provide a really unique adult education component that I think is tremendously beneficial. And the final thing that we haven't tapped into here, our private sector has a role to play here as well, and an opportunity for them to be able to provide meaningful internships and apprenticeships. That Europe is bringing back apprenticeships. Apprenticeships that occurred in the 50s and 60s. We need to start thinking in that way because it's all those things combined and much more. I think are going to make a difference.
So why is taking Montgomery County so long to implement some of these measures?
I think it's a combination of three factors. One, when you think about the history of Montgomery County, this has been going on for too long, but in the grand scheme of the history of the county, it's actually not that long. And so I think that I've been tremendously impressed recently with the openness of this and previous superintendents to change the paradigm, to change things up. And there's always going to be opposition to some of that change, but I think there has to be the political will to be able to try. That's sort of on a baseline level. And the second thing, I guess, is there's been disagreement within our own community about this. And we have to make sure that there is less of that disagreement so that to the degree to which there can be, we're on the same page. And the coalition needs to go beyond just our Latino community. We need to partner with our Asian community, our Black and Brown communities, and our Caucasian communities as well. And I think that's going to take some time, but I'm starting to see the political will there.